From my earliest age, my grandparents and my parents were trying to help me understand what money looked like in my world. Now, if you've been around and we've gotten to know each other over the last couple of years, you know that I didn't grow up with a lot of money. But I gotta tell you, based on how my parents and grandparents trained me to understand finances, I feel like I grew up really wealthy. Because it wasn't what we didn't have that was bothering us, it was what God would bless us with what we did have. Now, what does that look like for you and I today? What I would love to do on this weekend as we close out our series on Kingdom Builders is, instead of giving you a prescription, what I'd love to do is to walk you through maybe like an eye test. This weekend, what I want to invite you into is to look at what is the lens of your life. Like, how do you see it? The title of this weekend's talk is simply this: I see it differently. I see it differently. And full disclosure, I recognize that of the thousands of people who call Red Rocks Church home, that many of you see giving and finances and money and all of that differently than I do. I didn't get the opportunity to wrestle around the idea of money and giving because from an early age, I was taught that this is God's finances and I'm just a steward of his resources. And so forgive me, this weekend I know that there's a wrestling and there's a tension, but I see it differently. And what I'd like to do this weekend is just lend to you some lenses that have been passed on to me. You know what it's like in the optometrist, right? You know they do the click, 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 the big thing that looks like it should be on a Marvel superhero movie, right? And they go 1 or, oh, you've been to the eye doctor, great. And you're like 2. And then they say, okay, now 1 or 2. And you're like, nothing changed. I don't know, it just went click. The vision's the same. 3 or 4. But by the end of it, you seem to look at things a little clearer. What if this weekend we could look at some lenses for our life and go, wait, my lens for giving determines something about my life's pace and living? What if a clearer vision for giving creates a clearer vision for how you live your life? Why? Because I do believe that your focus impacts how you function. It's part of it. You ever been in a conversation with someone and you're describing the same scenario, the same story, the same date, the same time, the same moment, and they just saw it differently? So this weekend, maybe I see it differently. Maybe Scripture sees it differently. I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong. I want to go to what I believe is the ultimate truth. It's Scripture. And I want to look at what are 5 lenses for living a legacy. For living a legacy. Why? Because I can't teach you what I learned on my own without referencing Maud Powell from the Great Depression. See, because of the way she lived her life, she left a legacy behind. What would it look like for you and I to determine now what we want to leave behind for later? What if there's something about how we live, how we process money and finances with our kids, our grandkids, with our spouse, with our future spouse? What if we process with people around us and the goal is not to just give the right answer, but to live into the right solution? The interesting thing about this is when I live with intentionality, it's not just based on my momentary feelings or momentary costs. See, when God puts a plan in front of you, it's not just for what works now. What I would hope for you this year is we approach next weekend in our year-end offering. What I would hope is that you don't just give the right answer. You don't just go, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. Everybody's doing it, so I'm in. No. That's like weird spiritual peer pressure. Don't do that. What would it look like to go, no, God, thank you. I start with gratitude. And then I grapple with everything that you've given me. And based on everything you've given me, I want to make an intentional decision or response to what you have. There's a story once where they were receiving the offering one weekend and the buckets all passed. And they get to the end of the row and there was a young boy who reached in both pockets and he found that nothing was there. And so he took the bucket, he placed it in the middle aisle, and he stood in it. And the pastor was very confused, and he's like, hey, son, what are you doing? We need to turn that in. He said, well, preacher, I don't have anything else to offering, so I just give him all of me. And I thought, man, what would it look like for us to have this concept that if I pray about God having a plan for everything, if I go, God, I'm gonna give you my life, I'm gonna give you my heart, well, if I've given you my heart, shouldn't my treasure be accompanied with it? For wherever your treasure is, there your heart is. So if I've given him my life, my wallet's not separate. Ooh, okay. So here would be the question. Here's the question I want us to ask. What does God want me to give out of what God has provided. Okay, I want to take just a moment. I want you to see this question because what's happened with this lens, what's gotten clearer is my role in the process of finances. What does God want me to give out of what God has provided? You see, now we removed the stuff. It's not stuff anymore, it's provision. Here's what that means. It means now I'm in a place of stewardship that every area of my life is under his guidance, his authority, and his responsibility. So now my job is his responsibility. Why? Because how else did he provide it for me? I don't know the last time it happened to you. I've never had a gold bar fall from the streets of heaven into my house. It's usually through work, right? And through work, you receive finances. And so God, what do you want me to give out of what you provided? Now that changes everything because now it's not about what I worked, what I did, what my stuff. No, God, the very least, you gave me the ability to work. You gave me the gift, the intelligence, the wisdom, the education. God, because you blessed me with all of that, the byproduct is a resource. This moves stewardship from just resource to source in my life.